Hello everybody and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we'll be doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which sees the second weekend for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Also sees the new release of Firestarter, which I believe is also having a day-and-date release on its service as well, so we'll see exactly how well that film, or how not well that film, does in just a second. We also, of course, have previous or following weekends of other films set to come out, and some updated numbers as far as what those films will be looking like, especially Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, and kind of jumping off of what yesterday's video was talking about, going into why this film's approach to the billion is very, very likely at this point. So before we go any further, though, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure that you are subscribed to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So, of course, the big movie of the weekend will continue to be Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, expected to make a $68.6 million domestic second weekend, which would be a 63% drop, or a 63% hold, one could say. Expected to be around the same amount of theaters, and again, typically most movies when they come out, especially wide releases, they stay in theaters and don't move any of the actual theater locations, don't drop any theater counts, for instance, until after those first 2 weeks. Typically, those are deals that are made between the studios and the and the theaters, because studios, again, recognize that most of the money that they make in a film typically comes from those first 2 weeks of release, and it's normally a pretty good indicator of exactly how much money they are expected to make down the line. So, a very strong number there, pushing the domestic, again, close to $300 million, where right now the international is just on the brink of getting to $300 million. So this film will be well over $600 million by the end of this weekend, which puts it in a very good position as far as where this film likely will be in the long run. And let's just say $1 billion is almost a foregone conclusion at this point. Of course, we'll wait for the actual official numbers to come in, see exactly what kind of international drop-off we see. But if we are seeing similar drops or even a stronger hold internationally compared to last weekend, it is pretty much a done deal that this film will be a $1 billion success. It's already making money based on the fact that it's already crossed $500 million, which was its unofficial break-even number. We also have The Bad Guys continuing to hold around with another 23% hold, pushing its domestic to $66.7 million with another $7.4 million. Again, Bad Guys should be getting very close to its break-even point with that number, and in any international numbers it might be getting. The new film Firestarter from Universal, $7.2 million opening weekend at over 3,000 theaters, but as I mentioned previously, I do believe that they are having a day-and-date release for that film, so that is probably why that number is as low as it is. But also, even if they were not having a day-and-date model, I don't think it would have made that much of a difference, because I think anyone who has a genuine interest in seeing this film will actually end up going to see it in a theater, whereas anyone who's just a casual viewer at home, I would like to actually see the dynamic there. I would actually like to see the numbers revealed and released as far as how many people actually wanting to go see it versus someone who just casually comes across it, and just like what those numbers are in comparison to one another. Because for me, knowing someone wants to go see something is someone who is willing to go out of their house, go to a theater, and go through that entire process, versus someone who's just flipping through the channels one night and says, "Oh, look, there's a new creation of there's a new adaptation of a Stephen King novel. Let's go ahead and check it out," because those type of people do exist. And so I wouldn't really count those as being, fans of the franchise or fans of the film or people really wanting to see the film, but more of just like the happenstance, like, oh, look, this is new and then it's available. So that all being said, $7.2 million, not all that impressive, but I can't imagine that this film cost a whole lot of money to make, despite the fact that I'm sure that they are using some visual effects and they are trying to use some CGI in the film. No actual budget has been released for it at this point in time. But as I mentioned, it is based off of a novel from Stephen King, and you can see here the directors and cinematography, things like that. Blumhouse is making it, and Blumhouse typically, when they make films, tends to not spend a whole lot of money. One interesting fact about it is that Zac Efron is in the film, and hey, Zephron's awesome, so OMB Reviews is a fan of Zephron. Anyways, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is expected to have a 19% hold, $4.9 million, so that brings its total domestic up to $176.1 million through Sunday, so continuing to just chug along, destroy even that of the original film, and continue to make pretty good profits to boot. Everything Everywhere All at Once continues to hold. Again, this movie even though it's not making like crazy amounts of money in the compared to the Doctor Stranges, it's still making another $3.3 million at over 1,900 screens. So that's pretty amazing. Again, so its domestic total will be pushed to $47 million. And before getting into that charting, just because I'm just quite excited by this, because I think that Everything Everywhere All at Once is actually pretty good. So this is the worldwide total for it right now, is $46.5 million. And so if we look to that film getting up to $47 million, and that's just the domestic market, this film will get just even that much closer to its own break-even point, which has me excited, because if this little engine that could continues to have, again, a 6% hold, keep in mind, this is a film that actually had an increase one weekend, has had single-digit decreases almost every single week. It's been out for about 7 or 8 weeks at this point, so kudos to A24 for somehow being able to make their weird release schedule for this film actually end up maybe working out in its favor. If you have not seen this film yet, I highly recommend it. It is the much better multiverse film that is out there right now. I know, River totally agrees with me with that overall sentiment as well. Fantastic Beasts, 27% hold. That's actually a very, very strong hold. However, $3.1 million compared to the massive amount of money that this film needs to make makes the film not as impressive of a hold there. Again, it is starting to drop out of theaters, so we're going to see some pretty massive drops from those theaters once again this week, up to $90.8 million. So $100 million domestic, still possible, but again, law of diminishing returns and other major films set to come out in the next couple of weeks means that this film is going to start to run out of room very, very quickly. There's also a new release called Family Camp. Don't know much about it, but it is a very limited release film, so we'll see exactly what happens with that one. Lost City continues to hang around as well, getting closer to $100 million domestically, but even with its recent surge in the international market, I don't know necessarily if it's going to reach the official break-even point, though it's getting to the point where someone could technically argue that it is getting to the point where they could potentially write off the losses or make that up through 4K, Blu-ray sales, things like that. So yeah, definitely something where a late surge in the international market has definitely helped this film from the tragedy that it was at the very beginning. A 27% hold for The Northman is a good thing, but once again, because of their massive budget, it's just not really enough at this point. And lastly, the Nicolas Cage film, which is a lot of fun, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, $1 million. $1 million, again, expected to drop out of some theaters. 37% hold, $18.2 million domestic is where this film is expected to be. Still needs to make quite a bit more in order for the film to actually break money. So let's actually talk about Doctor Strange. So as of right now, it is at $507.7 million, meaning it has crossed the $500 million mark, meaning this film is already making money. It's already made its money back, it's already profitable, and it's well above any of the MCU films from last year, which I think says more about those MCU films than it does necessarily about pandemic times, because we've gone over this before. Films were still able to make money and bring people out to theaters even during the pandemic times. The problem with the films from last year from Disney was that, one, they weren't very good, and two, they cost a lot of money to make, and the only exception to that rule was really Shang-Chi, which, though it wasn't the best film in the world based on people who have seen it, again, based on just the mixed reactions that film had gotten, that it still only made around $30 million in net gain profits, and it was the only film in the Disney-specific MCU to be able to actually bring that up. But as you can see here, it tops $500 million, nears $300 million overseas, so doing very, very well in these markets, and again, reaching that break-even point. So really, the international market is the big story here, and if it continues in this direction, if it continues to make even more money, again, it's going to be over $300 million by the time the weekend comes about. Because remember that we don't always get daily updates for the international numbers for any films. But if this film's going to be over $300 or around $300 million, and this film's going to be well over $300 million, it means that it's going to be around $600 to $650 million by the end of the weekend. Again, that's just an early number, an early projection, depending on what kind of drop that we see. So let's go back to our predictions chart. So with those new numbers of the current box office if something catastrophic happens, the film will then still make worldwide $597 million. I don't think that's going to happen at this point, just based off of the actual numbers themselves. It just does not seem very likely. What is much more likely is either this or this number. I would actually say, as far as, between this and this. So it's going to have somewhere between $642 and $732 million by the end of this weekend, if I had to guess. So this is, again, looking at it internationally. So they are expecting the film to have, about a 60+% drop from the domestic marketplace. But let's say it only drops 30 or 40% from the international, and that's where it's getting more money. That's why you could see that, again, a 70 to 50% drop overall internationally would actually make a lot more sense. And, if things are even better, you could even see it be a 40% drop or a 60% hold from the previous week. So let's just go ahead with the worst case scenario in this case. So right now, I would say worst case scenario, likely worst case scenario, is $642.7 million. So plugging that into the chart then, the little box office chart, you can see this at ombReviews.com, is you will see that this film will be at a minimum projection of $918 million and an average of $1.1 billion. So I think that this should pretty much be the nail in the coffin as far as the $1 billion mark is concerned for this film, that it is essentially a guarantee. Unless this film were to have a massive drop-off in week 3, 4, 5, 6, and onward, and again, that would have to be pretty massive. Even a worst-case scenario for this film has it just shy of $1 billion. And again, I think that one of the numbers that you are likely to see is something even closer to this $687 million number. And so let's go ahead and take this number and plug it into the chart. So let's assume that that number ends up being the final number after this weekend. Then that would put the minimum projection at 982. So as you can see, it reaching $1 billion is almost a foregone conclusion at this point in time. It could still happen that the film doesn't reach $1 billion because the legs could still theoretically fall off. But the chances of that happening are not very likely, by the very fact that this film is continuing to be a powerhouse in the international market, by the very fact that it's continuing to do well even here domestically. Get a 63% drop from the previous week for a major budget film is actually a pretty good hold. This is a typical hold that you find for a big budget film. It is not the worst or the largest drop-off that we've ever seen. This film has also done very well in the daily numbers. So keep in mind, it made $12.6 million on its first Tuesday. It made around $13 million on its first Monday, only a 7% drop from the previous day. So this film is continuing to do very strong even after only 5 days of release. And as I said, will not surprise me to see this film reach the heights of somewhere between, again, I would say 642 and maybe a max of 732 million by the end of the weekend. And whatever those numbers are, we will, of course, cover them in the full box office breakdown this coming weekend. But again, I think that this film could definitely see $1 billion in his future because of this. But what are y'all's thoughts about this? Are you excited for Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness? If you have not seen it, are you excited that it's doing very well? I know that there are some people that are fans of that. What about some of the other films mentioned here? Do you think the bad guy is going to be able to get to its break-even point? It's getting pretty close. Firestarter, do you plan on going to see that or staying home to watch it or whatever it is that they're doing for the release? Let me know your thoughts on that. And of course, any of the other films. And if you have not seen Everything Everywhere All at Once, I cannot highly recommend that film enough. It is definitely weird and bizarre, but it has just enough of a normal story for people to be able to actually follow and understand and have fun with its multiverse concepts, so much more than what Doctor Strange is able to offer. Whereas Doctor Strange is a bit of a hot mess, Everything Everywhere All at Once is more of a, I guess you could say, a fun, much more well thought out, sometimes mess. Anytime you deal with multiverses or time travel, there's always going to be a bit of a mess, but when you're able to do it fun and you're able to do it where it actually at least makes sense and they follow their own rules, hey, it's a good time, so I recommend that film. But what do you know? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button, lap that fire button on Odyssey. Y'all all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless. Before going any further, I wanted to give a very, very huge special shout out to one of my Valkyries, one of my longtime supporters, Tina B, the Empress of the Universe. Thank you so much for being a supporter and for being a mod on this channel. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my members who are at the Keeper of the Bifrost level and above on Patreon, Subscribestar, and Locals. So first on Patreon, Brandon, let's go Brandon, Christopher Bowman, Garrett Searles, Hymir Irie Hymason, Jacob from Holland, Jacob Juice, who you can check out on his Letterboxd. Jacob Juice is how you can find it. Jeffrey Toon, Joey Horn, Jonathan Carney, Laura, the Modern Major General, Story, Mad Mike Jackson, special shout out for him in a second, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Orange Hat Reviews, you can check out his channel, Orange Hat Reviews, Rosetta Allen, you can check out her channel as well, Stan Andrian, and Miss Martin Muses, who also has a YouTube channel, and a special shout out, as I mentioned, to Jacob Juice from Holland, again, letterboxd.com/Jacob Juice for more information about him, and a special shout out to my members over on Subscribestar, Matt 317, Storm Tracker, The R, Fast Reaction, Mr. Roy, J-Rod, the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank y'all very much for supporting on Subscribestar. And to two of the members who are supporting me over on Locals, who asked for special shout-outs. First off, Minnesota hockey fan. Let's go. Let's get a hockey player. And UAB, Mad Dog, Mike Jackson for the win. Thank you very much for supporting me, and also Robert Barnes on Locals as well. Anyway, if you want a special shout out, and Brett D90 for that matter, if you want a special shout out at the end of every single video, please check out that top link at the very top of the video description. It'll give you more information about the different tiers and what you get every single month. Thank you guys for your love, for your patience, for this month's shout out video as well. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.